Deputy Assistant to President Trump Sebastian Gorka was interviewed by CNN's Brianna Keel about the deadly Annunciation Catholic School shooting that occurred in Minnesota. This interview revealed just how much the radical left media is trying to skew the reality behind this story to the American public. After that, Keel interviewed Ilhan Omar, the Minnesota representative and Somali immigrant, who provided her own twist on the story as well. We're going to talk about all that, but before we do, my name is Blake Cresses, and this is Trending Politics. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to stay up to date with all political news. So the mainstream liberal media is not going to tell you the truth behind this story, but I certainly will. We're familiar with the basics. The Annunciation Catholic School was shot up during a mass, 2 killed, over a dozen more injured by the assailant, Robert Westman, a radical leftist transgender terrorist, male to female transgender, who went by the name Robin Westman, and had a very clear motivation to murder Christian children. This is just the latest in an alarming pattern of LGBTQ terrorism against Christian youths. The media is still saying that there is no official motive behind this attack, despite the fact that Robert Westman posted a video on YouTube showing off his expansive weapons arsenal, all these weapons that had weird writings on them like, "Kill President Trump," "Where is your God now?" and then a bunch of vulgarities that I can't say here on YouTube. But at the beginning of that video had one of those paper targets that you would buy at a gun range to go shooting with a picture of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ either taped or stapled to the top, to the head portion of that target. Also had a journal with a bunch of very concerning writings, including drawings of himself looking in the mirror and seeing a demon. So this person was not only insane, not only transgender, but likely demonically possessed if you are a believing Christian. But the media says, no, there's no motive. Oh, and also it's the gun's fault. As always, they're going to use this shooting, this tragedy, to attempt to push legislation that would disarm the American public. Because this transgender person, who by definition is mentally unwell, because this is a person who is completely severed and disconnected from reality, believes that they are not the gender that they actually are, went crazy and killed a bunch of people. Now the entire American population has to be disarmed, and you need to be left defenseless to these psychos and their whims. These people who've been radicalized by contemporary mainstream left-wing narratives, who commit violent atrocities in the name of their religion of progressivism. You need to be disarmed and left completely defenseless because of their actions and because of the fact that no one saw the obvious warning signs. But anyways, we're going to jump right in and watch this interview with Sebastian Gorka right now.
Sir, thank you so much for being with us. We're hearing the Minneapolis Police Department saying Friday that authorities have been in contact with the shooter's parents. What are they telling them? What is being learned from the parents?
Well, it would not be responsible of me to reveal what is happening in an ongoing investigation, but we have to put this incident into the broader context of what we've witnessed in just the last few years. More than half a dozen attacks of a similar variety involving individuals who are confused about their gender, to put it mildly. And then, as you mentioned at the top of your monologue, we have the videos, we have the statements from the dead shooter that were clearly anti-Christian, just as with the transgender attack on the Nashville Christian school in which more children were killed. There is an ideological connection to multiple of these attacks where innocent children, especially Christians and Catholics, are targeted, and that is very, very disturbing.
I know you have focused very much on this shooter being trans, and I do want to speak with you about that, but while I respect that you cannot reveal specifics about what the parents may be saying, can you characterize whether what they're saying is helpful?
No, I cannot do that. That would be utterly inappropriate from a policy position in the White House. We leave that to the local police authorities and to the FBI. Okay,
so let me ask you about this. 96% of attackers when you're looking at the U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center, looking at 172 mass attacks in the U.S. between 2016 and 2020, 96% were non-trans men. So I know you're focusing on this shooter being trans. The shooter was trans, and that is certainly of note. But are you missing the bigger picture here when you zero in on that instead of more broadly these school shooters as an epidemic, and you perhaps miss the through line that connects them all?
Well, no, because your facts obfuscate two things. You are using data based upon the predominant gun violence, which is gang-on-gang violence with zero ideological content. If you remove all of that, the gang violence on the streets of Chicago, LA, Detroit, then you come down to a much smaller data set. So it's like those who say, you know, gun violence in America causes so many deaths, and then fail to note that the majority of the stats they are using refer to also suicides by gun, which of course is not what we are talking about here today. So let's concentrate on mass shootings at schools, specifically Christian or Catholic schools. Then the data set is wholly different. So don't conflate different data sets just to make a political point. There was an ideological content to this attack. That's what terrorism is. It's not because somebody didn't get the drug deal they wanted. It is an ideological message, whether it was anti-Israel, as in this case, whether it targeted President Trump in its rhetoric, as we saw on one of the magazines written by the perpetrator on that YouTube video, or whether we saw the fact that it was anti-Christian and targeting children. That has nothing to do with gang violence. Let's not mix the two things up.
So let's narrow it down then, because by CNN's count, when you look at 32 school shootings since 2020, in which you have 4 or more people who have been killed. So these are the larger school shootings. Only 3 of 32 of those shootings were committed by transgender shooters.
Yeah, forgive me if I don't go with CNN stats, okay? CNN has proven itself to be wholly inaccurate in all kinds of things for the last 10 years, perpetrators of the Russia hoax, and that we didn't have an open border. So please forgive me if I don't take your stats for granted.
All right, it's simple math. 2 of 32
No, it's
shootings.
not. It's distortions. You are distorting the facts. Let me be clear. In just a couple of years, we have seen 7 mass shootings involving people of transgender nature or who are confused in their gender. 7
I saw what
in
you
just
tweeted.
the last couple of years.
I see
That
your
is
list of 7.
inordinately high. So
I see your list of 7. 2 of them
I'm
are
going to stick. I'm going to see.
Sebastian and
I'm going to
Mr.
stick
Gorka.
with the facts and not
Okay.
not CNN's pseudo facts.
We can't stick with your facts because they're not accurate. In fact, in 2 of them, one of the ones you quoted,
let's talk about
CNN's
reputation for accuracy.
In one of the ones in which you posted, there was no evidence that he was trans.
Right.
In another, the individual was known within his family by male pronouns and used anti-LGBT
You have an agenda.
rhetoric. No, well, let me ask you this. You've made it clear, and this is not going to change. You think transgender people are the problem here. So what specifically do you think should be done?
No. When did I say that?
All right, you clearly think
When did I say that,
you
Brianna?
think it's a pattern?
You
You've tweeted about it.
You just created live fake news. You just did it right in front of
Mr. Gorka,
the small
what do you
viewership
think
you
should be
have,
done here?
okay?
You have zeroed in on the fact, on what you see is a problem, what you claim is a problem. What do you want to do about it? What do you want to do about this problem you see?
I have noticed a disturbing. Do you think it's a problem that individuals are targeting little children at Catholic schools? Do you think that's something we should ignore?
Of course I think that's a problem.
Thank you. So what we should do is we should look at the early warning signals, the signs. One of these shooters at a recent school shooting had 24 interactions with the local law enforcement. Now, that beggars belief. We should be providing off-ramps. We should be providing mental health options for these individuals. I find it hard to believe that an individual goes from getting his mother to sign a change of name certificate age 17, and then just a handful of years later is mowing down innocent children in a church pew during a Catholic mass, and nobody realized there was a problem. That's what we have to address to save the next children from the next atrocity. It's not about the sexual proclivities of the individual. It's the fact that nobody seems to notice a very disturbing pattern towards violence. You don't wake up one morning saying, I'm going to do a video on YouTube threatening to kill the president, targeting Jews, targeting children. That doesn't happen overnight. Somebody saw that degradation, somebody saw those mental issues and said nothing. That's what we have to prevent. The early warning signals must be addressed if children's lives are to be saved.
And what about all the non-trans school shooters?
What about all the same thing happens? They have multiple interactions with authorities, with their schools, with the principals. Why is something not being done? Instead of blaming an inanimate object, which is the weapon, how about addressing the human being instead and giving them aid, giving them psychological support, giving them an off-ramp? That's what needs to happen. We need to stop the violence before it occurs.
To that point, DHS cut funding to the Minnesota Department of Safety and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in July that is the kind of funding that's used to assess and manage mass violence threats like these. Was that a mistake, and should it be reinstated?
The same state of Minnesota that actually enacted gun-free zones that we know this killer actually favored. In his manifesto, in his videos, he studied the Aurora shooters policy of looking for sites where individuals were not allowed to legally carry and protect themselves. So I'd start not with the policies coming out of a Department of Homeland Security that gets the threat. I was with Governor Noem just a few days ago, and I'd concentrate on those municipalities and those governors like Tim Walz who do what? Disarm honest citizens who could protect lives and save lives. Let's start there.
But these kinds of things happen everywhere. And you're talking about giving people off-ramps, which seems like it would require assessing threats. That's funding for assessing threats. Should that have another look at it so that it could be reinstated for assessing threats?
I don't believe that the federal government is the answer for mental health issues, okay?
What about for assessing threats? You're in the business of assessing threats.
Can I finish my answer, please? Can I finish my answer? If we want to look for solutions, I believe in subsidiarity as a conservative. I believe problems should be solved at the point closest to the people affected by that problem. I would look to the town, to the city, to the county, or to the state, because they know the threats in their communities better. Don't wag your finger at DHS. DHS is doing an incredible job right now keeping America safe by getting rid of illegals from this country, more than 1.6 million, thanks to Governor Noem, thanks to Tom Homan, thanks to Stephen Miller. Don't look to DC to solve local problems. That kid had mental issues for at least 4 years, from 17 to 21. Why wasn't somebody in the community helping him? Because they didn't get a grant from DHS? That's risible. That's laughable.
Sebastian Gorka.
Very good points from Sebastian Gorka there, particularly the gun-free zone portion where he talked about, because the fact is that this place was a gun-free zone. But me personally, I might take it a step further, and we can talk about this in the comments. Please reply. Please comment down below what you think about what I'm about to say here. There can be some lively debate, but by the very nature of transgender people, as I stated a little bit in the intro, they are completely disassociated from reality. They are disconnected, severed from reality. They believe delusions, and unfortunately people around them validate those delusions and those beliefs. But the things that these people are willing to do to themselves surgically, chemically, to meet those delusions, to bring them to light, is it prudent to allow these people to have firearms? Now look, I would consider myself a big supporter of the Second Amendment, but these people, every single one of them, are dangerously mentally ill. On top of that, John Adams, one of the founders of our country, is quoted as saying, our Constitution was meant only for a moral and religious people. It would be wholly inadequate to govern any other. Was the Second Amendment intended to apply to insane people, mentally diseased people who believe that they are not the gender that they were born with? I mean, we have to think very logically about this and really have these sort of hard discussions. I would say probably, someone saying I'm not a boy, I'm not a girl, when they are very clearly a boy or a girl, that might be cause to say, hey, you know what? You should probably be institutionalized. You're clearly, not operating on the same realm of reality that everybody else is. You're a danger to yourself or others. We know their suicide rates. We know these problems. And on top of that, these people get involved in very weird circles of the internet. Where it's sort of a negative feedback loop. They're talking to these people, predatory people, who are then, similarly facilitating their delusions, encouraging their delusions. And these people are very violent, and they suffer from other mental issues at the same time. Look, Lady Gaga was stupid. Okay, these people were not born this way. These are actions. It's a choice to get a transgender surgery. It's a choice to dress in women's clothes if you're a man. These people, anyways, I won't ramble on anymore. Let me know what you think. Do trans people, should they be afforded the Second Amendment? I don't know. Comment down below. But we're going to watch this next clip with Ilhan Omar.
I mean, it's really unfortunate that we have people, like him speaking on this. At one moment he talks about the fact that the evil, murderous person who took 2 angels from us and harmed our community for a really long time. He talked about their transgenderness, and then he says that shouldn't really matter. At one moment, he attacks you for fake news in addressing actual statistics. Another moment, he talks about needing, mental health support, making sure communities have threat assessment. You point out that DHS has taken away those resources, and our communities don't have that kind of support. And then he screams at you and says it's not the responsibility of the federal government to assist the states. These people are all over the place because they want to deflect from the reality, which is that there was someone who came in to that school through the window and assassinated 2 beautiful angels as they prayed and put 14 other children in the hospital who are still fighting for their lives. And it is important for us to make sure that we are offering a slew of solutions. One is to make sure that we are getting rid of assault weapons in our community. 2, that we are addressing mental health issues if there are some. And yes, as a community, it is important for us to say something when we see something, when somebody is exhibiting signs that there could be a problem ahead, that we talk to them, that we get them the assistance they need, and that, yes, we do alert law enforcement. But this...
I would say a sign that there may or may not be a problem ahead would be a person identifying with the gender that they are not. That seems like a pretty big, clear sign to me. I don't know. But of course, with these people, it always goes back to gun control. They need to implement new gun laws. They need to ban these guns. And they need to take guns away from the people who would be able to stop violent attackers like Robert Westman. Need to take away their guns, confiscate them. Minnesota has very strict gun laws. We all remember Tim Walz during the 2024 presidential campaigns, where he was trying to play himself off as a gun guy. Pictures and videos of him going duck hunting or whatever. Clearly, if you watch those videos, very clear that he's not super comfortable with firearms. But this place, I mean, the way he governs has very strict gun laws. So, what happened? What were the failures? Clearly, they don't work. Annunciation School was a gun-free zone. Clearly, that didn't work. We have other issues at hand that the left likes to avoid, largely because their sort of incendiary rhetoric and rhetoric towards LGBTQ people is one of the major factors behind these anti-Christian hate crimes. But anyways, with that, I leave you. My name is Blake Cresses. This has been Trending Politics. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to stay up to date with all political news. You can find me on Instagram or X at Blake Cresses. My name's right there at the bottom left of your screen. If you need help with spelling, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.